group at the UNESCO. Professor Kajfež Bogataj has received numerous honors, including the Scientific Merit Medal from the University of Veracruz, the Order of Merit of the Republic of Slovenia, an honorary doctorate from the University of Primorska, and the European Women Inspiring Europe Award. And today she is going to talk us about climate change challenges in region Podravje in Slovenia. And before we begin, a few housekeeping rules. First of all, I kindly ask everyone to keep the microphone muted during the presentation, and you are free to write your question in the chat as they arise, because we'll collect them and address them in the Q&A session after the presentation. I remind you that this meeting is being recorded, so if you prefer, you're welcome to keep your mic and camera off. And after the presentation and the Q&A section, we'll have a brief segment of the meeting for progress updates for deliverable X.1. And this is specifically for Arcadia model regions. So if you are not part of the model regions group, you're free to leave and before that final part. So with that said, I leave the floor to Professor Kajfež Bogataj. And again, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Yes, hello everybody. Welcome to this presentation. Thank you for inviting me. My background is climatology, so I will talk about nature-based solutions also, but maybe from that point of view. And I was also like to make some new comments on the status of climate change right now. So I will share my screen. As I entitled my presentation, you can see I will talk about challenges, prefer challenges than problems, but actually it's could be the same. So let me start just to with a very simple explanation why climate change is a problem, because sometimes people say, well, what's the problem? It's getting a bit warmer and we like it that way in some regions. But actually the problem, and you might use that explanation also in the future, is that our civilization actually developed during the Holocene. And this period, you can see, we were very lucky to have a very constant temperature. So actually, no big shocks, no big stresses, and this allowed our civilization to bloom. But in the future, it's the end of this stability. So, of course, temperature will rise, but it will take also a lot of different processes along. So, in absence of stability, who knows what will happen? That's why the climate change is a problem, and we will have to mitigate it one way or another, but it's too late to stop it. This is also something that we have to be aware. So we will have to adapt to it. So this is the problem. It's getting too fast. The change and stability is gone. Because if we are reasonable and look at these numbers really with the cautious, we see that we have never experienced such a high concentration of CO2, at least in 2 million years. Sea level in many cases is a very important factor for our cities and the coast. And as far as it's so quick that it's now rising, haven't developed in the last 3,000 years. Arctic sea ice, also the lowest level. And when we talk about water, about our mountains, about glaciers, we also see that this civilization hasn't experienced such a state so far. So there are data supporting that thought that stability is really questionable. So what else do we have to know about climate change? That, okay, we are all in the same boat. Everywhere on this globe, we have warmer temperature, but it's not equal if we're living in the Central Europe or Mediterranean region, or if we are situated in some island in Pacific, because we are on land and this latitude where our countries, European countries, like is warming faster. In last 50 years, we already have warming that is greater than 2 degrees, because if you remember the Paris Agreement, the global agreement that we will keep temperature increase below 2 degrees globally. In Europe, we already have this increase. That's why climate change is already dangerous. We are experiencing floods. We have unusual weather patterns, not to mention dry periods and problems with water cycles. So it's already here. And that's why adaptation is really crucial. So this picture gives you the idea we are all in the same boat. But are we really? Because if we look at the changes in water cycle, things get pretty uneven, unfair, unjust. So climate change is really unjust to the countries that are probably not so guilty for climate change, but are experiencing worse impacts. And the worst impact is to have higher temperature and lower precipitation or more dry conditions. And a majority of land actually is in this brownish color. So if you look at Mediterranean, Central Europe, Latin America, West Coast of US, Australia, we can see that warming is accompanied with less precipitation and more dry conditions. And this is really a problem. And that's why we have to be really cautious about all our activities connected with water. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people living in Mediterranean area, not to mention Middle East. There are already political instabilities there. We have wars in the Middle East, but without water, these political instabilities will only grow more intense. So this is something for the future also to bear in mind. Water is so closely connected to the national security in general. Slovenia, of course, is warming like Italy or all the neighboring countries. We can see annual temperature that is increasing. Okay, there are some positive things maybe because we have more solar radiation in the last decades. This means that we could use more solar energy, but this is maybe not so, it's much more important what is going on with water. In regarding water, it's very hard to say what will happen on annual level. Because if you look at Slovenia precipitation, but it's very similar situation in northern Italy, for instance, we are getting more or less the same amount of precipitation on the yearly basis. But if you are a farmer or you are a forester, we all know that we don't need water in December. We need water in summer months. But when we look at the summer water balance in Slovenia, we can see that actually because of an increased evapotranspiration with warmer climate, we can see in Slovenia that, for instance, in Primorska region on our western side bordering Italy, the evapotranspiration has increased at least 20% in 40 years, which is a very short period. And the same goes for the northeastern part. And that means that more water is in the summer months, of course, goes to the atmosphere, which results then in more dry condition in the summer. So if you look at summer soil water balance, and I really would suggest that you in Italy, for instance, or Central Europe do the same, just look at the summer, you will see that actually dry periods or really drought that seriously affects the country on the national level are becoming more and more common. Because people say, oh, okay, we have dry condition before. Yes, we did, but every 30 years. But now we can see these red dots when pointing down that we already have dry conditions on the national scale. So it doesn't matter where in Slovenia you go. And this is the challenge for the Podravje region because soil characteristics are not so good in this part of Slovenia. Future will just bring, unfortunately, more warming. This is no way we can stop climate change. And this is very important because this, I call sometimes that Brussels language, fighting climate change. When you talk about fighting, you have this internal feeling that you can win. But unfortunately, this battle is lost. So, okay, we still can fight for lesser temperature increase. So we can see now 3 scenarios for Slovenia, but this is very similar also for the neighboring countries. So it's not very different in Italy, for instance. In the best case, we can see that we already had some warming about 2.3 degrees, but this warming may not exceed maybe more than 3.5. But we also have scenarios that are associated with business as usual, when we can actually have increase in Slovenia about 7 degrees. And sometimes people ask, okay, tell me, or people, usually it's a press, or and journalists come and please tell us what will Slovenia look like with a temperature increase of 7 degrees. It's impossible to answer. I mean, this is even biologists or ecosystem specialists don't know the answers. But probably the best answer is that it will be really extremely hard to survive in the way that we see our human well-being now. It's the end of human well-being. This is for sure. But even with the best case scenario, we will have problems because we see that already with 2.3 increase, we already have problems. Remember the floods in Slovenia last year, which were devastating. Well, we did not lose lives like now in Spain, but the economic loss, welfare loss was about 16% of GDP in 1 year, which is tremendous number. Right now, I guess tomorrow or today, new negotiations will start. COP29 is on the way. And next week, we will hear all this political talk and optimism and negotiations and how they are doing. But actually, where did we leave the COP at last December? We can see that what was needed to be done, what was agreed with the Paris Agreement, was this green line. You can see green line going down and telling us that fossil fuel should be abandoned by year 2070. But what is going on in the real world is this purple line. You can see purple line, this is what is agreed. This is what countries, 195 countries, promised to deliver, but they are not delivering. So we have this gap that is growing actually every year. And there's always an excuse. It was a COVID excuse, and then was a Ukraine excuse, and then is Gaza excuse, and maybe this year the Trump winning election yesterday will be excused. They're just not serious. And I really do not understand young generation that they are not actually being more active and more decisive that this has to stop. So actually, if something drastic doesn't happen, we are getting to the warming, global warming about above 2.5 degrees Celsius. For our regions, Central Europe, it already means around more than 4 or more than 4.5. So it's not very optimistic view right now. And I really wonder what will be outcome of these negotiations, because every year it's harder to take them seriously, in my view. So extreme weather is something that I guess is very pressing for Slovenia because of these floods that happened last year, and actually they are happening very often, not such a disastrous one, but for instance, in Podravje region, when they are not experiencing so much torrential floods, but the river Drava is simply increasing because it rains in Alps or in Austria. So, but we can clearly see that with every degree of warming, physics, this is not modeling, this is pure physics, says that actually with 2 degrees warmer, every really strong storm can bring 14% more water. But with 3-degree warming, where we are heading actually, this number rises sharply to more than 30%. But this is just the rain. But when it comes to flood, you have to add also the whole characteristics of the rivers and the area. And also you have to calculate all the mistakes in spatial planning that were induced during these years. So this 30% more rain can result in maybe 60% or even 100% more water at a certain position. And unfortunately, the science and the engineers, they are not calculating these things right now. They are still living in the past and think that with some hard solutions and building walls and dams or whatever will solve the situation. So this thinking, the climatological thinking, physical thinking, is not present at our decision makers, especially hydro or water planners. Unfortunately, at least in Slovenia, is like that. The next thing that is very clear for Slovenia is that actually we will lose our biodiversity. And this is extremely sad, because biodiversity doesn't just mean type of forest, for instance, but it also means how people live, what kind of animals do we have. And I sometimes say that biodiversity is also a factor for tourism, because if you are living a certain ecosystem, you have a special way of culinarics, you have a special way how to dress, and what are your lifestyles. And this is wonderful in some countries because we have such a regional diversity. But talking about forests, we can clearly see that in the future, without water or less water in the summer and much higher temperature, we will lose a lot of ecosystem types. Actually, what we will keep is the ecosystem of karst. Maybe friends from Italy know what karst means and what does it mean for the view. But this is different Slovenia, and this is different also in Podravje region, when you can see that we are losing a lot of types. So this is bleak, actually, but still we can adapt in a way that when we give some any action for in the forest, that we should keep in mind that we will lose spruce, for instance, or some varieties that are depending on water. And of course, water stress for agriculture. You can see on the left side Slovenia's fields. So when we can produce food. So the northeastern Podravje region, for instance, is our the best agricultural area, because the soil is good and the farmers are there. But unfortunately, with only minor climate change in the summer, this we already have. We can see that these regions, unfortunately, are regions with summer soil water stress. And probably all solutions how to keep water in the ground, and also probably irrigation plans are in order. But still also farmers are very traditional. They don't see that they will have to change the way how they produce food from climate point of view, not just from sustainability point of view. So yeah, this is also something that is problem. So to sum up, what are the challenges that climate change brings? I would say 5 of them. Of course, agricultural productivity will be reduced because it's the water that is problem. Water in general could be the problem. Even drinking water sometimes, because in Slovenia we are used to have water very cheap and available everywhere. So we don't have any conservation practices like in Israel, because they value every drop of water, but we are not yet on that level. Increased exposure to extreme weather, some forest ecosystem will collapse for sure, but we also have health risks, because Slovenia was traditionally not used to heat in the summer. So when we look at the cities like Ljubljana, Maribor, but even small cities, they can really have huge heat wave effects, and also heat islands associated with the wrong spatial planning. But the common denominator of this is that we will lose welfare, and we will certainly lose our well-being. That's why I guess these are really challenges. But it's also a challenge for European cohesion, because we are from different parts of Europe also in this project. But when we look at the estimated welfare loss and we compare European regions among themselves, like Northern Europe or UK, Ireland, or whatever is north, we can see that in that country so far, we don't see such huge economic impact of climate change. Even in some cases in Northern Europe, there will be some energy saving because of the mild winter. But when it comes to Central Europe, like Italy, or South Europe, like Slovenia, or we are both in the both group, for instance, we can see this sharp increase in welfare loss. So what would that mean for the European cohesion? Will Northern Europe help Southern countries? Because it's clearly not their fault that climate change is more changed for the worse in these countries. So this is something that our new European Commission that is right now being established should talk about, should think about. We should have projects about this. How can we manage that we will not end up in two Europes, Northern Europe and Southern Europe? This is really extremely important questions. And even if you are an engineer, not a social scientist, you have to be aware of that fact, because this is our common future. So mitigation and adaptation, this is something that we should do in the same time, actually. I would say that mitigation is still a bit more important, because mitigation is unlimited in a way, but adaptation is limited. I sometimes, when I talk to my students, I always use the example of Venice. We all know that Venice, the sea level rise will probably impact Venice. Yes, you could adapt a bit by the rising the walls and manage sea level rise up to 60 or 80 centimeters rise. But if the rise is bigger, there is no way, no engineering that can save Venice, for instance. So there is a clear limitation. That's why adaptation should follow mitigation. But luckily, we have a lot of synergies between adaptation and mitigation. And I would say that nature-based solutions are mostly situated in that intersection. They are synergies, and that's why I should really support this argument that we should kill two flies with one blow, or how we say in Slovenian language. But of course, there are two different things. This is from OECD study, because when we talk about people who are in mitigation business and people who are in adaptation business, these are different groups of people with a different knowledge, and for their work, different information is needed. So also stakeholders are different, people who are behind our decisions. So we should be really smart and careful when we do this. So I would really suggest that we should put more maybe effort in good communication, in good negotiation, how to do it, because it's not easy, and these synergies can be hard to achieve. A few words about mitigation, because mitigation is something that clearly exposes what's wrong with our society. Why are we not taking climate change so seriously? Because we will have to change political thinking. It's sure. Without change in political thinking, we will not be able to fight climate change. It's about how we develop and implement plans and strategies, and we should really avoid this carbon-intense economic development. But it's not just economic development. Whenever a country supports war somewhere, and we are actually making more and more machines or planes or drones or rockets or whatever, missiles if you want, this is clearly intense economic development. So even fight for peace is something that I would consider mitigation. But the most important part is patterns of consumption and production. We are living in the consumptive world, and young generations, sometimes I fear they don't really distinguish between things that we really need and things we want to have when we go shopping, for instance. So consumption and production is also. But of course, all starts with the money, and the money should be redirected to the investments toward clean technologies, renewable energy, and so on. So also this is extremely important. So this is what lies in the heart of mitigation. It's not so much about solar panels or I don't know how to use electric cars. This is secondary. The primary is how actually we think and how we want to develop in the future. So adaptation is something that is crucial, and I guess that we have options in every sector. When I am looking at the Slovenian situation, we have, I guess, a huge problem with adaptation because we don't really bring these sectors together. So some strategies are being developed in agricultural sector, for instance. We are quite good at disaster risk management, but all actions that are connected to adaptations don't really have a real institution, because without institution that takes care about what is needed to be done in case of adaptation, including nature-based solution, is had to have an institution. And this institutional gap in Slovenia is to deal with adaptation is actually huge, because without a real institution, we cannot develop, for instance, different policies and programs. Adaptation plans should not be done sectorally, but should be done in more inclusive way. And I also guess that with nature-based solutions is the same thing, because this is not usually not just for one sector. So we should include more people and do it in one smart way, if I may call it so, and not distribute it to, I don't know, 10 different organizations with different leadership and so on. So I think that it is time to think about institutional framework also, especially in Slovenia. Of course, you know better than me that nature-based solutions are not just something that should be connected to environment. It should be also should have a strong social component. And of course, economic domain is possible because it should be cost effective. And this cost effectiveness is sometimes also a huge problem. But I would say it's not so much about the money, because obviously there's a lot of money everywhere. We saw that at COVID, we see it now in Ukraine, but it's a problem of thinking. So cost effective, yes, but how to establish a new way, especially in engineers, to accept nature-based solutions. We have all these practical books and examples, but still in real life, we don't see enough of that. Probably it's about the process, how to operationalize this solution. So there are many ways, many suggestions how to do it. Of course, you have to plan it first, but also how to monitor your decisions or how to engage stakeholders. I guess every step of this process is important. It probably needs different knowledge and probably needs different people, because some are specialists in engineering, some are specialists in communication, some have this urge to be more connected with policy making or politicians even. And above all, when we talk about processes, we should be aware that there is sometimes this is circularity. So you will not probably get the best solution at the beginning. So you will have to correct your own mistakes sometimes or do it better. So it's, I guess, with the new nature-based solutions, we cannot really reach the perfect decision right at the beginning. So this adaptation of thinking and getting new ideas is extremely important. And I would say monitoring is something that is crucial, because without monitoring, we will not have a good arguments that it really worked. And people want to have this reassurance. Yes, it worked, but without monitoring, and it's hard to monitor, much harder than engineering solutions. So be aware of how to monitor it. But of course, it's not just the sunny side of nature-based solutions, because there are for sure some side effects that are negative. For instance, you will have to scale up some projects, you start with something little, but then when you scale things up, it may not work anymore. Usually we need more land, or we need some land that is used for other purposes, so there will be conflict. We will need money, so funding and investment is important, but we have to be, at least in my field, is so that we don't have the knowledge, complete knowledge. We are learning as we go. So actually lack of knowledge and expertise will be a problem in many cases. And some nature-based solutions, which are actually means that we are adapting to climate change or mitigate climate change, but they are vulnerable to climate change. So this sounds a bit illogical, but we have to bear that in mind, especially when we deal with vegetation. It's nice to say that we have more trees in the city to avoid heat in the city, but these trees will suffer because of higher temperature. They may not survive. So actually, we should have to bear that in mind. There are a lot of social and equity challenges. I mentioned monitoring, but also integration with other projects, because other projects are going on as well, not just your project. So how to go hand in hand with other ideas, because we have one space, one money, one country, and we should do the best. And also public perception. This is crucial, because if you miss that you don't get the right perception, you will only have problems, no solutions, and not to mention policy. So the last two I find the really important. So this public perception and misunderstanding, please do not fail here, because if you don't achieve that, problems will just arise. Because why? Policymakers and stakeholders still think these are some soft approaches, and they believe in walls, in something traditionally engineering. Mayors don't like such soft options. They would like to say to the voters, look, we built this wall against the flood. This is what I contributed. But also in people, this misunderstanding, because nobody was taught that in school, what these solutions are. So lack of awareness is something that should be avoided. And but of course, there are policy and regulatory barriers, a lack of supportive policies. So we need some new law, which should include lawyers as well, because they can help us how to establish some new way of incorporating in regulations all this project. Okay, so my time is now almost up, so I will conclude. I wish that conclusions could be more optimistic, and sometimes it's nice to end up with things, but climate change is here. It is dangerous, and it's going to get much worse. This is for sure. And if you can you imagine this sentence, how people in Valencia should feel about that when you said it's dangerous? I think I understand they now, but it's going to get much worse. This is something that is really cruel to the young generation. And also, I think this second conclusion is extremely important, because we can no longer postpone difficult issues. Low-hanging fruits have already been harvested. Why? Because when I go to school sometimes, they still say, well, little steps, let our children pick the garbage from the street and put it into the bin, and they are conserving environment. Too late for the small actions. So we should go really fully speed ahead. No, nothing to wait or to start with small steps. No way. I think also that slogan, think globally, act locally, is no longer valid. Think globally, act globally. So it's not really, we should not avoid difficult issues. And really every year matters, and every choice matters. So it's not like this year we will wait a little, and maybe next year we will think about it, and in 3 years we will implement something. So that time is also gone. And of course, the argument why should we do it now and globally is because these actions will not just protect us from climate change, but can bring social and economic benefits as well. And adaptation, as I mentioned, is now inevitable. And I believe that nature-based solutions are a great concept. But of course, as I said, there are several challenges in their operationalization, and it's nice to be aware of them from the beginning. And of course, without money and without investment in research and investment also how to redesign economy model as soon as possible, and of course, redesign also industrial waste of energy and material is also crucial. So I just hope that it was, I did hurry a bit, but I'm really now looking forward for some comments, concerns. Maybe there's more that I didn't mention, and of course, for some questions. So thank you.
Thanks to you for this very insightful and thought-provoking presentation. I think, and I really appreciate it because you provide a very broad perspective, not only on the climate challenges, but also what are the policy and social equity challenges of adapting, mitigating climate change, and also implementing a nature-based solution, which I think is wonderful for the Arcadia project for thinking about our different tasks and work packages, because we are dealing with exactly this type of questions. So right now, I'll open the floor for question and discussion. We have about 10-15 minutes. Let's say 10 minutes. There is maybe some questions or comments in the chat, and I'm going to read from Celsa Moros, complete agree, speaking from Valencia region. Do everything everywhere now. Very complicated now, thinking on reconstruction, and governments are not thinking on climate change, but business as usual, the fastest as possible. This is a comment, and it's really appropriate because we talked about how adaptation is inevitable and we need to do it with speed. But on the other hand, making it in accelerated way may bring some issue about justice and vulnerability. So engaging with appropriate timing, and maybe this is a type of reflection we could ask to you. So also I have some comment that I noted down, because you rightly pointed out that mitigation is unlimited, but adaptation is limited, and also that adaptation should follow mitigation. I was wondering about trade-off between these agendas, because I can see, for example, in Europe, we witnessed to, first of all, the engagement locally from the mayors in the Covenant of Mayors with the sustainable energy action plans and following the sustainable energy and climate plans. So we have this kind of move between mitigation and adaptation agendas, and adaptation followed the mitigation agenda. So what about the trade-offs in the use of natural resources, in the case about MBS, for example?
Yeah, this is something that is really, well, it doesn't have one simple answers, because things are connected. And my experience is that actually when we talk about mitigation, especially on the local level, like municipality level or region level, people in Europe have this feeling that we cannot do much about it. So they always point at, I don't know, US or China or whatever, that the decision lies about constant greenhouse gas emissions in other countries. And that's why they are more prone to adaptation, because they feel that adaptation is something that they can actually have impact on, can also bring some benefits for them, for next election, for instance. And maybe that's why adaptation is a bit more appealing to them. And also, you know, with adaptation, if we talk about floods, for instance, if you do something, whatever, nature-based solution or classical solution, next year when the flood comes, the result will be there. So you can see, wow, look, now we did something. But while in mitigation, all these results will show for the next generation. And this is something that is... we have to bear in mind that psychology is extremely important. On the other hand, what I feel also is not clearly regarding mitigation presented to the wider audience, not just policymakers, is the options that we have. So people are aware of options that we switch energy source, like from fossil fuels to gas or to renewables. But when we talk about energy efficiency, that we would actually in Europe, with our knowledge, could live our lifestyle with a half of energy we need today. This is a topic that is not discussed as much, but this would really mean new jobs, new research, new industry boom. How to live, it's very clear, half of energy that we need today. Maybe if you talk about mobility, cars can be made half of the weight they have, like they used to be. I always talk about Panda, a Fiat Panda, which is my favorite car. If you compare Panda in Italy, the first one, with the narrow wheels and the weight of the car that was 800 kilos, but now we have, I don't know, twice as much. So not to mention our houses where we could live with a half of energy for heating and so on. So energy efficiency is the field that is totally misinterpreted and not enough in the focus when you talk about Europe. And of course, it's also the lifestyle and the economic model. GDP per person is growing faster than our well-being. So economic model is also. But when we talk about global world, not outside the Europe, we also have this unpopular talk about population regulation. It's not about hard measures like it was implemented in China. But when we talk about India, when we talk about maybe Latin America also, but empowering women, giving women good healthcare and jobs, it solves the increase of population very quickly, like it happened in Europe. So there are different mechanisms of mitigation, many of them, but we just see one unpopular maybe, and switching energy, it doesn't mean new jobs and so many new jobs, So maybe I went a bit broader to your question, but we should ensure that people see the broader picture.
Thank you very much. I don't see any raised hands, but I can see there is a question in the chat from our coordinator, Arianna. First of all, thank you for the insightful webinar that summarizes well also the reason why we are doing this project. As Professor mentioned, the importance of, among other, policies and people, I'd like to ask about her experience in interacting with decision makers. Any suggestions for Arcadia project?
Yes, I think that this is crucial. I have experience in my own municipality, for instance, when our city, Kran, he's now chosen to this climate neutral city till 2030. Of course, I am a professor, and there is some biased views on that, but I would really stress the importance of raising awareness or a simple education, but not about educating children, but educating policymakers. So providing them seminars, webinars, academies, because it should be appealing to them. You should not send them to school, but to some form of education where they get really basic information and that they feel a part of your project, not just that they feel they finance your projects, but that they are contributing to it. But they can, in that case, it's not just the project could have much more success, but also you will get the next project. Because you should involve decision makers in the project itself in a very smart way, Just showing we are researchers, but you are some stupid guy who give us money. I mean, I'm joking a bit, This is counterproductive. You should really do like, oh, you have a good idea as a mayor. We will try to incorporate it, and sometimes they do. So connecting to people, making them part of the project, not just observers. This would be my suggestion.
So it's more like a sort of co-creation rather
Yes,
than...
co-creation, exactly.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions from participants? I can see in the chat there is no further question. or maybe also Jada if has any question. So if no further question, maybe we could just jump into the next phase because I have further comments on your presentation and I would like to bring it forward, but we have limited time. So
But we can stay in touch and we have our
exactly,
emails and we can do some exchange of ideas or anything in the future. So it was
exactly.
nice to be with you. Okay.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to join us in other occasion and chat again about this topic. So thank you again, everyone, and once again, thank you, Professor Kajfež Bogataj, for this presentation and discussion and for your time with us today. So at this point, we'll move into the final segment of our agenda, which is about the updates on the deliverable X.1. So this part of the meeting is specifically for our Arcadia module region. So if you are not part of that group, you are free to leave at this time. And for those staying on, we'll focus on progresses and updates on ongoing challenges with the deliverable, if any. I'll wait a few seconds. In the meantime, Jada rightly pointed out that for any further information or questions or comments about the work presented today, you can contact us at arcadia/wp6 at cmcc.it. So before we dive into the specific updates, I'm trying to share my screen. So today, I like to quickly remind everyone that the deadline for the deliverable is coming up in November. On this regard, I'd like to check in with also our coordinator, Arianna, to confirm the final date. Arianna, could you
Yes,
please?
I'm sorry. I'm at the exhibition. It's very noisy. I don't know if you can hear me. Just quickly, yeah, ideally would be half of November because it's we start 6 weeks before the deadline for reading and sending comments back, feeding back with comments. Also, the deliverable have time to digest the comments and that would be like mid-November would be perfect.
Okay.
Also, there's a bulk of deliverables coming in at the same time, so I can be flexible for a few days, but not more than that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Arianna. It was difficult to hear everything, but we understood that the deadline is mid-November, at least internally. Just also considering the Christmas break, so we need to review them and integrate revisions as the real submission to the commission is by the end of the year. So we have. Just to remind you that we've introduced some updates into the guiding text for section 3.6 because new materials have been added to the template for the part on upscaling transformative change. And these updates were provided by our partner Climate Kick as part of the task 7.1. So if anyone needs assistance for or further clarification, our partner from Climate Kick is available for support. You just need to contact us at the Work Package 6 at CMCC to organize as soon as possible a meeting. So we are gathering your availability and also from our partner Climate Kick. So please reach out to us as soon as possible if needed. Just to mention that so far we haven't received any emails regarding issues or delays, so we are assuming that everything is progressing smoothly, but we would like to confirm everything is on track and address any questions or concerns you might have. So could I please have a confirmation if we have representative here today for each work package from 1 to 5?
Hi, I'm Martina for region Emilia-Romagna. Okay. Okay, our deliverable is now under review, and there are still some contribution that we need to define and complete. And so these days we are working with all the members of the WP1 to complete the document. But I think we are at a good point, so by the deadline we will deliver the document, I think around the 15th of November. Thank you.
Great to hear it. So if you have any challenges or problems, please just say so, raise at this time. Do you have someone from Lower Austria?
Yes,
Or
it's
package
me.
two?
It's Alexis speaking. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm pretty optimistic, like Martina said, for the case of Emilia-Romagna. We have been working these last weeks, even months, in this document together with the other Lower Austrian partners who have been actively collecting data and jointly building up this document. And I'm confident that we will deliver it in timely. It will be a consolidated version with all sections. My only comment is rather related to formal issues, not content. Regarding the chapter 3, you delivered a new version of the template for section 3.5, sorry, 3.4. And I personally, I don't know how the others feel, but I don't really feel much comfortable with this table because it is quite comprehensive, and this format in this portrait format is not really, I think it's not the ideal solution because the columns are very narrow, and as soon as you have text or longer text, it is not that convenient to read. But again, this is just a secondary issue compared with the really important stuff, which is actually the content.
May I react just fast? Thank you, Alexis. So I think, we could maybe, as a solution, we could summarize some elements within this table that you just mentioned. And then if you have more information, we could put it in the annex, maybe more detailed table. This can be a solution for that issue.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah, we can try. To put it in just using keywords in order to avoid long, long source. Okay. It seems reasonable to me. Thank you, Dan.
Great, thank you, and thank you also to Dana. So maybe just starting writing the full text and then transposing everything into the table for making it more concise. What about work package 3? We have anyone here who can
Yes.
provide an update? Yeah.
Hi, Carla Mlađan from Regea. So far, we're in a good track, as well as all the colleagues from the previous work packages. There are no challenges so far, and the only thing is that there was, I think, in an email that Dana sent, it was that the deadline is the end of November. So I think by the mid of November we will have a very high draft, but maybe not the end version.
My mistake, I'm sorry, because I understood that it was like by the end of November, but I don't know what Ariana thinks about that. Like, do you think like maybe 20th of November would be okay? But also, I guess for the final revision of the draft, I guess also not like the complete version, but at least the good structure of the deliverable will be enough. I don't know. What do you think, Ariana?
Ariana just
Right, yeah. Sorry, she just wrote in chat that a very advanced draft is also okay. So I think we will definitely have that by mid-November.
Okay, that's great to hear it. What about Work Package 4? Any challenges, any updates?
Hello, this is Alice from Work Package 4 in Skåne. We are working with the draft, and I would say that it's very close to being finished. So we will be ready by the mid-November deadline. It's looking like we're well on our way. And yeah, well, I think the format is quite loose and adaptive, so we haven't really had that many problems. Regarding the tables for the lab specifically, we have figured out by having like a very short summary for the table, and then we write it more specifically in the text. So that's how we have solved it, at least. And it's looking okay for now.
Thank you very much also for providing us this insight on how you handle this about the table and text. What about Work Package 5?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah, I think we're progressing fine. We've set up a soft deadline for the project group participants to write in the document, and we are blessed with the visit from the Skåne region next week. So we are working towards a deadline or internal soft deadline on next Wednesday. So we will have a draft for you ready to read as well. I have a question in regard to the objectives of the labs. We are at the moment facing some changes in Denmark. There has been established a new ministry and a green trepart, and I don't know quite how to translate it, but it's an agreement with the government and key stakeholders within the farming societies in order to reduce I don't know what the English word is, but in order to further reduction from the farming industry into the water cycle, and they have also, the government has also launched a reform of the regional administrative level, so we cannot quite establish our cases for lab 2 and 3, so we are only able to maybe describe the objectives on a more theoretical level, not as much as being specific about cases. And what are your views on that?
Sorry, I was responding to Ariana. Could you please sum up? Sorry, very sorry.
Yeah, my question is how specific should we be in our objectives on the labs?
I think for now there is no need, because we will have other deliverables where you could probably specify or change a bit the structure, the content within the objective. So for now, I think it is fine to have more loose objective in order to have
an overall introduction.
In order to have some kind of threshold, in order to adapt a bit then the final objectives.
Okay, thank you. So that's the status from BP5.
So thank you very much for this update and sharing your challenges. So we are almost perfectly on time for closing this meeting. I want to thank you everyone for your active participation and the updates today. I just want to remind you about the next two Work Package 6 webinar. Share my slide again. So just a reminder that the upcoming events are on November 21st, a webinar organized by our partners from Work Package 3, and December 5th on another webinar organized by Work Package 5 on nature-based solution in seed and stream-by from the FUNEM project by Lars Kildal Sonderby. So that's it, I think, for today. And thank you again for your artwork, and please keep these dates in mind. Make sure to participate if you can, and we look forward to see you at the upcoming sessions. Thank you.
Right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.